Good evening. Welcome to week 6 for American Public University, Intel 454. Just want to start off with some announcements. First, the assignment 1 is due next week. You should start looking at it for this week, the indicators exercise. It's a short exercise, only 400 to 500 words, and it's bulletized format. It's not something very detailed. But I want you to think through the indicators, and the scenario is Sarin in New York, and you should have a pretty good indication of indicators from your readings and our notes on Ohm Shinrikyo. So I just want to make sure that's clear and concise, and if there's any questions on the assignment, please let me know. The one thing I'm going to say is if you get the assignment to me earlier, it's not due till next week, but if you get it to me earlier, I will grade it and turn it around so you have at least some guidance for before the last assignment or before the last paper. So yeah, we're starting kind of this week to massage it, start doing your research for it, and it's due next week. And yeah, as I said, it's a critical step for the final paper. Second point is that where I work, DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, it's the DoD's counter WMD arm. They are actually hiring contractors, and this is something rare. It was common back in 2006, 2007, but to put out a request for 15 to 16 analysts to fill a contract that's brand new is something rare, and DTRA or DoD counter WMD is doing that. So those positions are being advertised through various contractors that are bidding on the work. So what I would recommend you do is just go on intelcareers.com or clearancejobs.com or even just monster.com or careerbuilder.com and type in WMD intelligence, and you'll see dozens of positions or a dozen positions for junior, mid-level, and senior counter WMD analysts. 2 locations are at Fort Belvoir, which is south of the Beltway, and in Reston, Virginia, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with the DC area, it's a nice little enclave up in northern Virginia that's a pretty nice place to raise a family and have kids. So if you're looking at post-military transition assignments, or you're looking to transition jobs, you're just looking for potential opportunities, those are out there. TS SCI clearance is required. Probably some Intel background is required, but you can kind of finesse that. The TS SCI clearance is probably going to be a non-negotiable on that. So there's just 2 announcements. Just review last week. I think we got different viewpoints on what is the most likely type of WMD threat out there. What would terrorists resort to use? As I'm taping this, I just found on the news today there was vials of smallpox found at the National Institute of Health today. So that's kind of an interesting, very relevant and interesting spin on what's going on. But it was apparently an unaccompanied vial of smallpox that was found. That smallpox is probably it's the nightmare scenario, but it's probably the rare scenario. We've done a decent job of securing all the smallpox that's out there, and for those, in case we haven't, we've reintroduced vaccinations, particularly for first responders for smallpox. So yes, smallpox would be a disaster if it got out, but unless it could be weaponized or bioengineered, it's probably not the biggest threat. Just kind of some vignette. Ohm Shinrikyo, when we talk chemical versus bio, Ohm Shinrikyo had a bio program, they had a chemical program. They chose to go chemical, use chemical warfare. And the reason was they could, well, 2 reasons. One, they had the technical expertise in manufacturing of chemical process, and they couldn't scale up their bio program. So Ohm Shinrikyo chose chemical for their attacks. And the other advantage that chemical gives is that it is biological weapons are a latent capability. You don't see your impact for 3, 4, 5 days, maybe sometimes weeks, sometimes months. But if you're a terrorist group or a messianic group and you want to make your signature known, a one-shot strike like a chemical weapon is more likely to induce that. So Ohm chose chemical. However, there's some biopathogens that they could have used. Anthrax, as we saw in the 2001 attacks, was fairly easy. There's other ricin you see on the black market. Salmonella, and I'll send a video of the Rajneeshis, and they use salmonella to their advantage for their bio program. The one thing to look at is the virulent strain. Smallpox is one. Plague is another, where you not only just use the bio to induce casualties, but it causes it to spread. So that's one thing to look at when looking at bio, and I'll talk about that in a second. And some of you mentioned nuclear. I really don't think a nuclear bomb is within the capacity of terrorist group. There could be a radiological device, but a nuclear bomb is something very difficult to, even if you have the material, to actually employ and be effective. Is it possible? Certainly, but the threshold is so high, and the question comes, would a terrorist group want to use nuclear when IEDs, chemical, even bio gets its point across? So it's food to think, food for thought. Just for next week, again, preview bio indicators. Just early warning is something very difficult to ascertain when we're talking biological weapons, and the Interpol article kind of alludes to that. One indicator, and I will send a video of the Rajneeshi attack in 1984, how they determined, first of all, they didn't determine it for months that it was salmonella impacted by a cult, and you'll see that video in a second. However, they didn't determine that for months, and only when there was a very concentrated sickness of salmonella, and they could actually do the stool sample, were they able to ascertain what happened and who did it. And then finally, point of bio that I want to allude to is the impact on public health. Anthrax in 2001 overwhelmed our public health system, and that was only one guy, 5 killed, sent through the mail. It overwhelmed our public health, our safety, our mail system, our first response, and that's something that even an explosive or even 9/11 didn't overwhelm our systems of public health or systems of first response as did the anthrax attack. So that's just something to consider. I'll send the short documentary, a 5-minute blurb on the Rajneeshi attack, so you have an idea of bio indicators. And if there's, for those of you who haven't done the forum yet, please include the Rajneeshi stuff in your discussion point. So if there's any questions or issues, please let me know, and I look forward to your discussion questions.